Good day, good day. Thank you everybody for coming. Club Carnivore, and we've got the historian Carnivore in the house. Just you wait and see what we've got for you today. Hello.
Hello, we're live. Okay, so my name's George, George Goodenough, and I am, as you have christened me this week, the Carnivore historian. So we're here to have another history lesson tonight about the heroes of the past. Now, last week we did episode 1 of this, so we talked about the heroes from the 19th century. And we started off with the French Surgeon General during the Napoleonic Wars, Dominic Jean Larrey. He was the man who. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so Nikki's just the host is just temporarily indisposed, so we'll just do a quick recap. Yeah, in 1801, at the Siege of Alexandria, he discovered that if you fed your troops fresh horse meat, then those who are suffering from scurvy would actually be cured of scurvy, and those who weren't already suffering would not go on to develop it. So he was the guy who kind of proved that fresh meat had enough vitamin C in it to cure scurvy. So he was very much one of our heroes from the 19th century. Picture on the screen at the moment is Dr. J.H. Salisbury, very famous American from the Civil War era who invented developed the Salisbury steak, which he found was basically improved health generally. There was talk that it was a scurvy outbreak, but there is some dispute over that. But it was definitely a cure for dysentery. So he again was another fabulous hero of the 19th century. And lastly, in the last program, we looked at the English carpenter and undertaker called William Banting, who had a major effect on the low-carb, high-fat world when he was put on a low-carb, high-fat diet in the 1860s. And he was so impressed with it and so successful that he wrote books on it, or wrote an article called A Letter on Corpulence addressed to the great British public. And it was very, very popular. And oddly enough, the Banting diet took off in South Africa in this century, but he was incredibly influential. So tonight we're going to be talking about the last century, when really things started to gather pace for us of the low carb, high fat community. We are going to see how the term ketogenic came into the lexicon, into the English language. We're also going to look at one of the famous studies from 1928. We're going to have a look at the Randall cycle, the famous Randall cycle, which I will never understand, but I just rely on Professor Barkay to tell me how to understand it. And we're also going to look at Dr. Robert Atkins, famous for the Atkins diet in the 1970s, Professor John Yudkin, who was a contemporary of his, and finally we'll have a look at Jim Abrahams, who has played an important role at the very back end of the last century. But I'm glad to announce that Nikki is back, the hostess with the mostess. So I'm going to hand it back to her, and I've just done a recap of last week, and I've done a little taster, if you like, spoiler alert for this week. So there's Dr. Dominic Jean Larrey, the scurvy man. So we've already discussed him. So and we've looked at James H. Salisbury. Do we have anything, Nikki, that else that you want to put on the screen?
I've got all the photos. So we've got Dominic, we did Salisbury. Now, how about we?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk through the next slide. So let's move on. Okay, so we're moving on now to the 20th century, and we'll deal with Dr. Russell Wilder first, because he's on the screen. He was one of the great men who was examining the effect of the low carb approach to treating epilepsy in infants, in children. He was not alone. He was very much part of a team, and he built on the work of other people, and his own work was then carried on. So I need to give a few credits here and what roles those people had. The main thing that Dr. Russell Wilder should be noted for above all the others is the fact that he was the man who introduced the term the ketogenic diet into the English language in 1923. So whenever we now refer to the ketogenic diet, that is in fact his phrase that he brought to us. So he is perhaps the most important of the that team, that group of people in that era. However, he was not alone. Prior to him, there was a chap called Bernard McFadden, not Bernard, but Bernard McFadden in the United States, who discovered that fasting for health was very effective. And he had a student called Hugh Coughlin, who actually came out of the dreaded Battle Creek Sanatorium set up by John Harvey Kellogg, which is the most unlikely place for us to find a hero of our movement. But I think we can safely say that Hugh Coughlin was. For he recommended fasting for 18 to 25 days in order to battle epilepsy. Now, those of us who are following Dr. Kilks and Dr. Nelson and the KMT, such as Juliet over here, I see who's just joined us, we are aware of the fact that they are doing prolonged fasts. I believe that Dr. Nelson's doing 20 odd days and Dr. Kilt's doing 15. But they did have a forerunner back in out of Battle Creek, which is surprising, who recommended 18 to 25 days. So what they are doing is basically carrying on his work, and he was the forerunner of the ketogenic diet. Now, in 1921, this is very important, an endocrinologist, in other words, a hormone specialist, called Rollin Woodyat, noted the ketogenic cycle, what was to become the ketogenic cycle. So he noticed that acetones, beta hydroxybutyrate, and if it weren't for the course that we've just done, I would not be able to pronounce that. And he also noted acetoacetate. Nikki's laughing because she's done the course with us, and so she knows that it's one of the lessons that we had. And beta hydroxybutyrate. I'm very proud that I can pronounce that without actually having to read it off the script. Yeah, so he discovered the three key elements of ketones, and then it was Dr. Russell Wilder himself, who was out of the Mayo Clinic, which is one of the more famous ones over in the States, who actually named it the ketogenic diet in 1923, and it was very much part of the treatment for epilepsy in infant children. It was proven to work, and it was the standard treatment for epilepsy in children for the following 15 or so years. And then an excellent chap called Minnie Gustav Peterman carried on Dr. Wilder's work. However, in 1938, the discovery of the anticonvulsant drug phenytonin basically put an end to the practice of treating epilepsy in children primarily with the ketogenic diet, because it was then became a drug. It was a pharmaceutical issue. It was regarded as a pharmaceutical issue, phenytonin being the anticonvulsant in question. So yeah, I think we can all agree that Dr. Russell Wilder definitely has a very special place in our history, because without him, we would not be calling low carb, high fat, or even carnivore the ketogenic diet. So a great deal of thanks to Dr. Russell Wilder and the team of people around him that both came before and after him. So that was, so you can always look up these people. Remember, what I'm trying to do here is not give you the full details, the full be all and end all of them. I am giving you direction towards people that you yourself can actually go and research, and I'm giving you their background. So that concludes the team who created the ketogenic diet for epilepsy. So we'll move on to the next one, see who it is. Right. Okay. So this is Professor John Yudkin, an Englishman. He came much later in the century. In the 1970s is when he really came to the fruition, if you like, the completion of his work with the book Pure, White and Deadly of 1972. Pure, White and Deadly refers to granulated sugar, sucrose, the table sugar, the sugar which is made up of one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. He believed this to be the root cause of many of the chronic autoimmune conditions that were prevailing, especially cardiovascular disease. and so coronary heart disease, in other words. So yeah, John Eucken was unfortunate, shall we say, as many people were, to be around at the same time as Ancel Keys. Ancel Keys, as we know, Ancel Keys, as we know, was the guy at the time who was ruling the thinking on what was causing heart disease with his demonization of saturated fat. John Eucken was very much an inconvenience to Ancel Keys because it put him under threat. If people believed John Eucken, then it would mean Ancel Keys' work was all for nothing, and that basically that's not what Ancel Keys wanted. He carried out very vicious personal attacks on both John Eucken and the work that John Eucken was carrying out. He tried to discredit his study methods, but John Eucken goes back way before 1972 because he had been espousing the theory that sugar was the enemy, not necessarily saturated fat, since 1957. He wrote a book called This Slimming Business in 1958, which advocated a low-carb, high-fat diet. For those in America, it was actually renamed and republished under the title Lose Weight and Feel Great. He gained some traction in the literary world through this book, and his culmination of his work was really Pure, White and Deadly in 1972, which basically caused a storm of derision from the sugar companies, the hugely wealthy sugar companies, who did everything they possibly could to discredit his theories, and of course supported by Ancel Keys. Really, it all came to a head in the 1977 William McGovern report, which led to the 1980s guidelines, the dietary guidelines, which, as we know, have led to mass metabolic manslaughter. It's been a trade, really. But Eucken was called to the McGovern report to give his evidence. He did so, and William McGovern basically dismissed him with the words along the lines of, "This goes against everything that my doctor has ever taught me." And that effectively was the end of John Eucken on the big stage. This was 1977. He then pretty much retired from academic work. He carried on a bit of work elsewhere, but it was really, and there is the book Pure, White and Deadly if you want to go and get it. But basically his meaningful contribution, his meaningful stand against Ancel Keys had failed. It was over, which allowed the guidelines to come out in 1980, which led to the train wreck that we see today of obesity, cardiovascular disease, and all the other associated diseases with it. It's a shame that he bravely stood against Keys, but he was steamrolled by the political momentum of the time. So he definitely goes down as the second of the 6 heroes that I want to look at this week. So we'll move on to somebody else. Dr. Atkins, the famous Dr. Atkins and the Atkins diet. Yeah, not something which I'm necessarily over familiar with myself because although it was about the only thing that I'd heard of in the low carb, high fat world when I first came into it 3.5 years ago, because it was quite popular back at the 1990s and the turn of the last century. I had a friend of mine whose girlfriend was actually on it, and she achieved some success. I didn't really take it seriously at the time, but I was aware of the fact that it was it was all about meat. And I thought at the time, well, maybe I could give that a go because it's I like meat. So, but I didn't really think about it too much at the time. And then she disappeared out of his life and took the Atkins diet with her. So I never really gave it much thought again until such time as I became, part of our community, the carnivore community, the therapeutic restriction, carbohydrate restriction community, and people such as Dave Mack remember it from their first attempts at the low carb and to lose weight. He was born in 1930 and died in 2003. The Atkins diet advises avoiding or limiting sugar, refined grains, low fat foods, high carb fruits, and starchy vegetables. So, again, he's very much on the same page as us without necessarily being on the identical page. For, in my view, it's a bit complicated, and he still believed that carbohydrates were necessary for normal nutrition. It's a 4-phase diet, which starts off with fewer than 20 grams a day, which is of carbohydrates a day, which is classic ketosis levels. However, it does lead to the reintroduction of carbs, which is here where we differ as carnivores from Dr. Atkins, on account of the fact that we don't believe it is necessary to add carbs back in, and I certainly wouldn't do so. Full disclosure, I still drink non-alcoholic beer, so I do get a few liquid carbs. I think that's about it, really, apart from possibly... No, I think that's probably about my carb intake now, other than the trace carbs that you find in cheese and eggs and that. Atkins probably didn't understand that the need for carbohydrate in the human body is 0 grams per day forever, because there is no such thing as a necessary carbohydrate. And for those who are going to say, oh yeah, but the brain needs carbohydrates or sugar, glucose to function. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Which is why we have this wonderful hormone called glucagon, produced by the alpha cells in the pancreas, which turns amino acids from protein into the glucose which the brain needs. At any one time, provided your body is working properly, it will produce the exact amount of glucose that it needs to function correctly. And we certainly don't need any more than 1 teaspoonful of sugar circulating in our bloodstream at any time. So therefore, carbs are not necessary in the human diet. Now, he was not a healthy man, and there was a huge amount of controversy over his death in 1973, because he did die of a coronary disease. And of course, those who would push back against us are desperate to prove that it was the diet that killed him. However, it seems more likely that he was long time had congestive heart failure, cardiomyopathy, and it was possibly genetic. He had a lot of problems going back a long way, so the diet was incidental to that. And as just as a matter of interest, his wife actually denied she refused to allow an autopsy to happen on him. So his death is somewhat of a mystery, which is a shame, because basically those who would push us back are clinging on to his death by heart attack in 1973 as a tool, a weapon to use against us. However, the jury is out on that one, so I'm prepared to let that one rest and hopefully give us the benefit of the doubt. But we don't know for sure. So we've had a look at the Dr. Atkins diet revolution. He's I think the third of our heroes from the 20th century. So if Nikki would care to flag up another one from our little library that we put together, we'll have a look at the next slide. Philip John Randall. He's a fascinating guy. He really is. I'm just going to go and find my notes on him so I don't confuse everybody, because he confuses me, believe me.
And if everybody wants to come in live, I've put up the live on the screen there. So if you want to join us.
Yeah, certainly. I'm looking at the time. If I'm 18 minutes halfway through, so basically, I think I'm probably going to complete the slides by about halfway through. So that would be great if anybody wants to come in and discuss things. But if I can just go through the slides, and we've got a good time afterwards, Nikki, for anybody to jump in and join us. That'll be great fun, because it is about fun. But we'll carry on talking about the Randall cycle. Sir Philip Randall. Okay, so Philip Randall was born in 1926. His doctoral thesis was interesting.
He was born in what year? You cut out there. When was he born?
1926. He was born in 1926. So he was 2 years after my own father, actually. And so he actually wrote his doctoral thesis to get his PhD on studies on the metabolic action of insulin. So he was well clued up that insulin was probably one of the key factors in metabolism. Excuse me while I cough. got a bit of a dry throat because I'm talking quite a lot. Okay, so yeah, he was prominent in the field of diabetes research. Now, obviously, I'm a former herself a type 1 diabetic, two very, very different conditions. And I do question whether type 2 diabetes should be called diabetes at all, because it's actually hyperinsulinemia and hypoglycemia, whereas obviously type 1 is a totally different thing, which by which the insulin, the pancreas is damaged, or there's never function really. And the in type 2 diabetics, the pancreas gets damaged, but you can reverse it, as I have done. Right, so and to give the right, this is interesting because I think everybody knows that they call it the Randall cycle, and nobody really knows what it is, apart from possibly Professor Bart Kay and possibly Jonathan Griffiths of Carnivore Muscle, who has spent a lot of time studying it. But if we give it its full name, it kind of explains it a bit better. So its full name was the Randall cycle of carbohydrate and fat metabolism. So basically what he was doing was looking, ignoring protein and looking at how the body metabolized carbohydrate and fat in concert, if you like. It was also known as the glucose fatty acid cycle. So what he was doing, basically, he was showing how the body can switch between fuels, between using glucose and using ketones, the fatty acids. He came up with the Randall cycle in 1963. He had many honors. He was a very well-respected, honored scientist at the time, one of which was the Banting Lecture of Diabetes UK in 1965. Now, this goes back to our friend William Banting from the previous century. So he was still, his name was still being used, and it still is today. And he had an honour in his name in the UK in 1965, which was won by Sir Philip Randall. Now, Professor Bart Kay, who I've already mentioned, he understands the mechanics of the Randall cycle, which is something I don't. And he wonders why Sir Philip is not better known. Now, I think the clue is in the year in which he actually published the Randall cycle, because this was 1963. And our great friend, our old friend or foe, Ansel Keys, was at the time the guy who basically crushed Professor John Yukin's reputation, was at the time at his most rampant. In 1961, he was named as Time Magazine Man of the Year, and he looked like he was going to be the savior of the human race from cardiovascular disease with his diet heart hypothesis. Therefore, anybody who came up with a theory showing that the body can function perfectly well using fat as ketones as a source, he was not going to be allowed to really come to prominence. Now, I haven't got the evidence that I've got that Ansel Keys had a direct intervention against Randall. My guess is that the Ansel Keys gang, his cheerleaders, were being so noisy at the time through Time Magazine and other publications that probably that Sir Philip Randall didn't really get a look in. Therefore, his work went unnoticed apart from in academic circles. But as we've seen, it was very well and truly accepted in academic circles, because he did win several awards. But he wasn't featured as Man of the Year on the front cover of Time Magazine, and mainstream media trumps medical journals. So that was really the reason why Sir Philip Randall didn't come to the prominence that he deserved. In my own take on it, what I remember about the Randall cycle is that glucose, the body can feed on glucose, and it can also function on ketones and fat. And if you actually overload on both carbohydrates and fat, you are not creating a balanced diet, you are creating a conflicting diet, and the body doesn't know which way to turn. So you end up getting very fat and you get diabetes, like I did. I'm down from 293 pounds to 173, and I'm no longer diabetic. And that's because I eat a balanced diet, which is fat and protein with no carbohydrate. So thank you, Sir Philip Randall, for that one. Okay, so I think we've got some more people.
We
next,
do.
actually. Yeah, let's have a look.
But I'm just wondering. Let's go over them all and make sure that everybody's got.
Oh, right. Okay. So yeah, this is a new one for this evening. This is the Hollywood producer, actually, Jim Abrahams. He was part of a little group of people who produced such classics as The Naked Gun. Those of us who remember that one, let's showing our age now. Leslie Nielsen, what a hilarious movie that was. So yeah, he was a Hollywood producer. So how can he possibly have an effect on the ketogenic world? Well, he had a son, Charlie. Well, he has a son, Charlie. Charlie Abrahams, who is now a successful teacher, I believe. Jim himself died only as recently as November last year. He had a 20-year battle with leukemia, which he lost last year. He was born. Jim was born in, let's have a check, in 1944, and he lived to the age of 80 in 2024. And he fought leukemia for 20 years. Very brave battle. But his key role was the fact that his son Charlie was a terrible sufferer of epilepsy when he was a child, and none of the anticonvulsant drugs were having any effect whatsoever. And then he read about the 1920s work. So this brings us nicely back to the ketogenic team of the 1920s with Dr. Russell Wilder and the ketogenic diet. And he discovered it. He discovered this work. So he then, out of a form of desperation, I suppose, basically put Charlie on a ketogenic diet. And what do you know? Charlie's condition improved massively to the point where he was able to really rejoin his normal childhood. Charlie is now a very successful teacher, I believe, and from what my research is showing, and his epilepsy is very much under control. Now, Jim was a wealthy man, married, and he was so grateful to the work of the ketogenic people back in the 1920s that he started the Charlie Foundation. He was a co-founder with his wife, and that was to help cure pediatric epilepsy in 1994. So he was kind of the back end of the 20th century, versus 70 years previously had been when Dr. Russell Wilder was around. So there was a nice circle here, if you like. So at the relatively beginning of the 20th century, the ketogenic diet was just coming into fruition, or into being, really, I suppose. And then at the very end of the 20th century, so Jim Abrahams was able to set up the Charlie Foundation, bring the ketogenic diet back into the popular consciousness, the consciousness of the public, which then led on into the 21st century, and it eventually led to us, the modern day keto followers, the therapeutic carbohydrate restriction followers, commonly known as carnivores, hyper carnivores, whatever else, other low carb, high fat. We are all part of the same broad church. So yeah, I think we owe Jim Abrahams quite a lot for basically keeping it going and keeping the momentum from the 20th century into the 21st century, which has enabled so many of us to have such fantastic results. Okay, I think there's one more person that I would like to touch on from the 20th century. Nikki, if you can find me Wilhelm Stefansson, that would be nice. But don't worry if you can't. We'll just talk about him.
No,
there's Dr. Wilder, yeah. And we're going back to the 19th century.
Okay.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Can you bring me up onto the big screen so that I can show off better?
I got something for you.
Go on. Okay, no worries. Let's have a look. Here we go. Here is Wilhelm Stefansson. He was christened William Stevenson. I wish he kept that name because it's a damn sight easier to pronounce than Wilhelm Stefansson. Although I've been practicing that quite a lot. He was actually born to Icelandic parents in Manitoba, in Canada. In the year he was born in 1879.
He was born in Canada?
Yeah, he was born in Manitoba, Canada. his parents said that. Yeah, there's one for the Canadians. We got Canada on the border, but yeah, absolutely. So his parents actually emigrated from Iceland to Canada, and he was born in 1879, christened William Stevenson by his parents, who wanted to blend in with the anglicised names in Canada. And he actually changed his name back to the Icelandic version when he was about 20 years of age, which is interesting. Now, he was an Arctic explorer. He was a man who brought quite a lot of controversy with him, because the Arctic exploration back in those days was really a dangerous affair, and a ship that he abandoned to go and try and get help was broken up by the ice with the loss of all souls, but he managed to escape using, I believe, dog sleds. But of course, it drew a lot of criticism. It was a case of he saved himself, but in my view, it wouldn't have done any good for him to say just to sink, go down with the ship, when he had plenty more important work to do. And the only way that he could have helped those people is by going and getting some support from the local Inuit community and coming back to help them. But it didn't happen. And there was a couple of other people were lost on his expeditions, but the Arctic is a dangerous place. Now, there were times when he basically went there thinking that he had taken enough supplies. He didn't. And he ended up eating as the Inuit did, which was the very much a meat-based diet. And in the end, he spent about 13 years on and off with the Inuits and lived perfectly happy on a meat-based fish and diet with a few fermented veg, I believe. But basically, it was meat-based. Now, his assertion that a modern-day European man or American man could live on meat alone was met with a lot of criticism back in the United States. So in the end, it was decided by a year-long study in the Bellevue University of New York. This study was launched in February of 1928 and was to last for a year. Now, he was perfectly prepared to do it by himself, but the fear was that it would be a meaningless study, because if he got ill for any reason other than the diet, or if he got run over by a bus, for example, then all the data would be lost. So he needed a partner, but he needed a partner who didn't have any preconceptions about it. And there are very few people out there who actually fit the bill. But he eventually found a young Dane called it was a Dr. Carsten Andersen. He was Danish, and he had a very open mind. He had done a bit of Arctic exploration himself, but he wasn't actually carnivore at the time. So it meant that he had to change to going to the all meat diet. Now, he and Wilhelmir went in for 1 year in a controlled study in Bellevue University in New York, and they ate only meat. They ate an exclusive meat and fat diet. The ratios were 80% fat and 20% protein, which is what I think most of us are pretty much familiar with nowadays. Right, so just a quote, both men remained healthy. They showed no sign of vitamin deficiency or kidney problems. And in fact, they showed improved health and disease resistance.
Should I plug in with my computer?
It sounds like we've got a bit of technical support going on in the background with Nikki, but I think that's no problems. So yeah, now again, I'm here to give you an overview, not the definitive history. However, I have found a fantastic primary source, which is the Bellevue study the history of Wilhelmir Stefansson in his own words. So I'm going to tell you what it is and where you can find it. It's actually called Wilhelmir Stefansson's All Meat Diet, Parts 1 and 2, and you will find it on the website physicalculturestudy.com. Now, physicalculturestudy.com is 3 separate words run into one word. So physical culture, and study, but there are no spaces in between the words, and then it is a .com. If you put that into your web browser, into your search engine, and look up Wilhelmus Stefansson's All Meat Diet Parts 1 and 2, it brings it up very nicely, and it is in his own words. Now, it's incredibly detailed, incredibly informative. I have yet to read it fully myself because I simply haven't had time while I've been doing the research on all these people. But it is on my list of things to do. And it explains how it came about, how the people who encouraged him, the people who discouraged him. And yeah, it's going to be a great read for me. So I would highly recommend other people here who are interested in the history of the carnivore diet. I think it's going to prove to be a very useful resource. Now, I happen to know that from a bit of research that my friend DC over in Australia did, he showed me a short video clip in which the words balanced diet were used. And this would have been in the 1930s probably, or 1940s possibly. It was Wilhelmus Stefansson. He talked of the balanced diet. And guess what? It wasn't carbs, protein and fat. It was fat and protein. So those people who talk of the balanced diet haven't got a clue what they're talking about. They are talking utter nonsense. I won't use the English word. And they don't realize it. But they have hijacked the term balanced diet, because the term balanced diet actually refers to fat and protein, because it was coined by Wilhelmus Stefansson. So it was his to own. They have stolen it. So you might want to mention that next time somebody says everything in moderation and eat a balanced diet. No, a balanced diet is fat and protein. Anyway, so that kind of brings me to the end of we're 36 minutes in, so that kind of brings me to the end of the 6 slides. We've given each of them a few minutes. So yeah, it's over to you, Nikki, and see if anybody wants to come and join us, or if anybody's got any questions, then please feel free to ask.
Yes, and I'm gonna just go over these slides again. Anything you want to say about, for people who come in late? You want to go a quick overview?
Okay. The year was 1802. The place was Alexandria. The horrible British were besieging the French. The French had loads of scurvy. Dominic Jean Larrey, doctor, fed his troops horse meat, and they didn't have scurvy anymore. Next. Dr. J. Salisbury, a hero of the American Civil War. His troops had dysentery, all sorts of diseases. More people were dying from disease than they were from enemy action. He came up with the Salisbury steak, and basically cures a lot of the gastrointestinal diseases that were killing his troops, such as dysentery. The jury's out on the scurvy theory. I'm prepared to believe it. He probably had a knock-on effect, but he saved a lot of lives through nutrition. How many of those lives were then lost on the front line, I don't know. But such is the madness of war, and I'm a war veteran, so I know all about the madness of war. Okay, thank you for that, Nikki.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah, it certainly is. Okay, so Russell Wilder, one of the least known people from our history, because I think when we hear our doctors talking, and when I study, we do hear the name Salisbury, Banting, and people like that on a fairly regular basis. I never heard of this guy until one day last week actually, I decided to go and research the people who brought about the ketogenic diet for epilepsy in the 1920s. And this is the man, the most important of that particular group of people. Why? Because he actually came up with the term the ketogenic diet. So it is to him that we owe basically the 2 words, the ketogenic diet, which describe our lifestyle. So without him introducing that into the language, we would probably still be struggling to find something which neatly fits our lifestyle. So we owe a lot to Dr. Russell Wilder. John Eucken, the sugar man, pure, wise and deadly. Very good scientist. Long had suspicions that sugar and saturated fat was the problem. That sugar and not saturated fat was the problem. Attempted to prove it, wrote Pure, White and Deadly, came up against the millions of the Sugar Research Foundation, and came up against the ego walking on 2 legs that was the evil thing that is Ansel Keys. And basically Ansel Keys made sure he was able to discredit him. It came to a head in the 1977 William McGovern report when poor old Professor Yudkin was sent home with his tail between his legs. He was right. They were all wrong. The dietary guidelines came out of it, and what has happened since is basically the equivalent of metabolic mass manslaughter, we'll call it. Many millions of people have died unnecessarily young, and many millions of people have lost body parts to diabetes, and it's down to the fact that nobody would listen to John Yudkin back in 1972. Very, very sad.
Very. Thank you for bringing this up. Stories not to be forgotten.
No, they're not, certainly not. Dr. Atkins, probably one of the, I wouldn't say he probably wasn't one of the more serious ones, but he actually carried on with the ketogenic revolution without realizing it. He realized that carbs were the problem, but he wasn't really able to take it as far as carnivore, because he still believed in adding carbs back into the diet after you sorted out your metabolic health problems. He wasn't a well man himself, died at the age of 73 from heart failure, was found to have very badly clogged arteries, but that was the he didn't have an autopsy, but he was found to be congestive heart failure. He was unhealthy throughout his life. The people who support carbohydrate training and carbohydrate loading basically try to pick up on that fact, but it's not proven either way. But what we do know is that a lot of people had a lot of success with the Atkins diet, but the only problem with the Atkins diet is it encourages you to go back on the carbohydrate. So it's one of those yo-yo diets that you have great success on, and then you're tempted to go back, and it's mission creep again, and you put the weight back on. As I said before, there was a chap I knew had a girlfriend who did it for a while, and she again lost a lot of weight, but by the time I didn't see her anymore, she was beginning to put it back on again. So yeah, he was definitely he kind of, when Yudkin was dismissed, then Dr. Atkins was out there and he kept the flame alive. So we do owe him a bit, and he definitely did keep the flame alive through the 1970s and 80s.
Okay.
That's another picture of Robert Atkins, much older before his death. Died in he lived to 2003. So again, he actually lived into the 21st century himself. Died at the age of 73.
73. Thank you. Now we've got thank you so much for sharing with us. Is there anything else you want to add that's coming up for you now?
Not really, no. I think, what we've done, as you know, you've very kindly christened me the Carnivore Historian, which I like, actually. I hadn't really thought of that. And I was just talking on Sunday School Carnivore and telling my great friend, the Carnivore teacher, about it earlier. And certainly I was having a chat with Dr. Nelson and Dr. Kiltz about it the other day, and Dr. Nelson predicts I will write history books in the future, which I probably will do, to be honest with you. We had a look at the heroes from the 19th century and the 20th century. I don't think I really need to go into the 21st century next week as far as the heroes are concerned, because I think most of us have found them through YouTube, and those people are such people as Professor Thomas Seyfried, Professor Robert Lustig, Anthony Chaffee, Plants Are Trying to Kill You, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Robert Kiltz, our sponsor, fabulous man, and various others, Dr. Lisa Wiedemann, to name but a few. I've got a massive list of doctors who fit the bill. But I think that we're all aware of them. So what we really need to do now is go back next week, Nicky. I'll go away and do my research. We talked about the heroes, but what about the villains, the pantomime villains, the boo-hiss villains? Because they very much emerged in the 19th century themselves, and they carried on well into the 20th century. And let's face it, they're more fun, aren't they? Because we really do enjoy having a dig at them. So we're going to be going back to Sylvester Graham of Graham's Crackers, because he was completely crackers. And also, of course, the legendary Ellen Gould White. I won't spoil it by saying which church it was that she founded, but she was the high priestess of the vegan church. And her protege, John Harvey Kellogg, Kellogg's cornflakes. Does anybody know why he recommended cornflakes? Was it to make a man of you? Was it to give you, make you a much more fertile? Yeah, it's much more healthy. No, but we should examine the reason as to why, and I shall try and find some language which is acceptable to everybody when it comes to describing the reason why he didn't want men to be to actually be eating red meat. So, and then obviously we're going to go into the 20th century. We're going to look at the Russian scientist whose name I can never remember, who insisted on feeding rabbits meat, and then said, "Oh look, they're all dying. Therefore, meat must be very bad for the human race, because if we feed rabbits meat, they curl up and die." Okay. Now they are kind of rodents. Did he think of that? I wonder, when he was feeding them meat and saying that they were dying. I need to do a bit of research on him, so we'll do that. I know that I find the name very hard to pronounce. I've got no doubt somebody out there is going, but it's him. Yeah, and I'm sure you do know, but I shall do the research on that. And then, of course, we're going to look at the notorious Ansel Keys and his 7-nation study, and his diet heart hypothesis, and the Minnesota coronary experiment, in which he ironically totally disproved his own theory, and then took his name off the paper and hid the paper, as all good scientists do when they don't get the result that they wanted. There's various there's various other villains out there again, but those are the most famous ones off the top of my head. William McGovern being another one, the McGovern report. And Rockefeller as well. We need to look at Rockefeller, because basically he using it. Yeah, Rockefeller, but using his petrochemical wealth, he bought out the medical industry and standardized it so that you had to only had to have allopathic medicine through drugs, and he carried on his wealth by dominating the pharmaceutical companies. So there was no alternative medicine. You couldn't go back to root cause. You had to prescribe drugs if you were a doctor, because he owned you. And that condition still exists today. So I think, as you can see, we've got a lot of villains to get stuck into, many of whom are only names and outlines to me at the moment. And I'm going to have a lot of fun over the course of the next couple of weeks doing a deep dive down the rabbit hole. But again, I would urge you to do your own. Don't rely on me, because this is kind of new to me as well. So what I'm doing is giving you names. I'm giving you a couple of resources, and I'm giving you an overview of what they're about. But if you're a critical thinker, please do go and study them for yourselves. So that's
I'm just going to go.
That's my way of thinking. Yeah, you carry on. It's great because my voice is getting sore. I need somebody else to talk.
I want to say hello to everybody. What everybody's been saying into the chat room. Deanna Raw just says, "Stop." Talking about Kellogg's, stopping people from being sexual beings. Interesting.
Thank you, Deanna. You are brilliant on the course, because you always have very good knowledge, and it certainly is a different way of putting it than what my military mind leans to. I'm a typical ex-soldier who we used to talk very much more frankly about things, using words which would not be suitable for general consumption. Yeah, so basically Kellogg's wanted human beings, for women as well, I presume, to actually stop from being sexual beings. He basically wanted to draw a blank canvas over the sexual proclivity activity of the human race, even though apparently he had some very bizarre habits himself in the background, which didn't involve other human beings apparently. But Anthony Chafee likes to talk of those, but perhaps I'll find a way of touching on those as well.
I've never heard of that.
Okay, yeah, no, I will find a way. I will find a way of, because Anthony was what I saw was actually talking in a very blokey fashion with a couple of Australian blokey people, and he put it in very crude, blokey guys, and yeah, he put it in very sort of crude terms, we say. So I won't borrow it directly from Anthony to discuss it. But yeah, Anthony Chafee is an expert on what John Harvey Kellogg got up to in his spare time, shall we say, and what he called healthy as well. So there we go.
Interesting. Coach Juliet Edens, thank you for coming in. She said she's staying on to listen in one ear.
Okay.
Darling, have you booked a family via video call in 6 minutes? It's family. Hopefully I can keep it short and be right back. I will watch I miss and reply.
Yeah, we're not going. Yeah, and we got Deanna with us as well, which is nice. So we got the couple of our great classmates.
Yeah,
We've had
Shannon Stark says hello.
oh, Shannon's there as well. It's excellent. That's good news. That's wonderful. Yeah. So I don't know if you know, Nikki, but on Thursday this week on the 6 o'clock, Dr. Kills is 6 o'clock. The lady Katie, who was supposed to join him, couldn't make it. So I had literally just tuned in, and poor old Ali was saying, right, anybody out there? She was looking in comments. She said, what I want is any of the recently qualified. She said, George, you were in the comments. Come and join. So I didn't let her down. I went and joined them. We had a great chat, actually, myself, Ali, Dr. Skills and Dr. Nelson. And it was at that point that Dr. Nelson said, well, actually did say for the first time, he said, I'd like to include a bit of history into the future teachings, and I will be asking George to be the history teacher. So this is great practice for me, believe me, because if the Dr. Kilt's vision of a citizens academy, or university, as you wanted to call it, a Carnivore University Academy, comes into existence, and with Dr. Kilt, you never can tell, never ever underestimate the power and the drive behind that man. If it does come into existence, I think all of us will have a role to play, because we were the original coaches, and I've always maintained that a lot of people out there are a lot better at pronouncing beta hydroxybutyrate than I am. So I foresee my role as being the carnivore historian, as you have so kindly christened me. And I will be using that in the future, but we shall see. Anyway, right. So, is there anything that anybody else wants to bring up in the comments, or wants to come on and join us? My voice is getting a little bit tired now, because I've already done Sunday School Carnivore this evening, believe it or not. So yeah, it's
you're so good.
Yeah,
I
that was great fun. If anybody didn't watch it live, or go back and find it on John Laspina's channel, the Carnivore Teacher. We had a fantastic, lovely young lady called Pumi tonight from Zimbabwe, and we had a great deal of fun. Rick was in the audience, so my famous Rick duck did its famous flight across the screen.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I gotta get a mascot for next week.
Well, exactly. Well, I have my own. I have my own mascot. So basically, whenever Rick appears, and my duck does aerobatics across the screen just to keep Rick happy. So there we go.
We'll keep.
But no, a mascot. I think that's a really good idea, Nikki. I think that all of our YouTube channels should have a mascot. But Bagsy the duck. I Bags the duck. Yeah.
Duck is great. I'm actually doing what's called, I've coined the term DFF, the duck fat and fish diet. That's what I'm doing for the next 3 months. I'm doing a peptide test.
Yeah. So that sounds like a very watery diet, because ducks are obviously very watery, and so are fish. But I'm only joking. Yeah. But I suppose you could call it an aquatic diet, couldn't you? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
aquatic diet. So, so next week we're going to be talking about villains. So we're on Club Carnivore. That's my other channel. If you're listening in, just join us there if you wish. So it's just a new channel. I'm here live on YouTube now. If you want to check this out, a different angle, I'm streaming also on my Miss Laughlot YouTube channel. So thank you very much, George. We're going to wrap it up here. And
brilliant. Okay, I'll hang on for a second when after you finish when you press the button on the live, and we'll just have the usual after show party, because that's when we break it. That's when we break out the champagne and the chocolate and the potato chips. Oh, I didn't really say that, did
I? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna see if I got another picture of you. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, I got. Do this again. I'm really impressed with my learning curve. I'm learning how to do this. Okay.
I'm still behind you, believe it or not. So there we go.
I don't have the other one of you. I'll get it next time. But anyway, this is a picture of. Why didn't that come up? I'm gonna put a picture of. I got to remove an image to bring up. I was gonna bring up a picture of Amy Perrin. I'm gonna be on her show on Wednesday.
Oh, Amy, yeah. Yeah, hey, Amy.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
There'll be
yeah,
a few type 1 diabetics.
yeah. We've got a couple of. Yeah, I've seen Amy's trying to track down the fourth type 1 diabetic on the course, isn't she?
It's a
She,
mystery.
yeah, because there's yourself, her, and I know the other person. I got the third one. I can't remember off the top of my head. Teresa B. That's right. Terry B. Is it? I think so. Yeah. And there's one other, and we're having trouble finding out who it was. Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
figure it out. So Deanna Ross says regarding the Rockefeller family is the way our medical school are funded by big pharma.
Yeah, that's my understanding so far. Basically, they follow the money, and the money has bought the Rockefeller money has basically bought out the medical industry. Deanna is absolutely right. She is, Deanna is. I've been very impressed by her knowledge over the last 13 weeks. Very glad that she's one of us. I'm very glad to see her here as well, because she's also joined the WhatsApp group in fairly recent times. And she's a great source of knowledge, so it's a great comfort to have Diana as a friend. It really is.
Yeah. Yes. I'm looking forward to getting to know who you are. I'm sorry I don't, but anyway, I'm getting a request from my email, from my YouTube stream. It's info@laughtercore.ai. Don't tell anybody. Make sure you tell me who you are. I know just tell me who you are because otherwise, if I don't know who you are, I'm not gonna open the email. But anyway, thank you so much everybody for joining us. Join us next week. George will be telling us about the villains.
Yep, some of the villains.
Are you gonna wear a costume like a costume like a
villain? I haven't really got anything suitable really, because no, I'll have a thought. I mean, I've got a werewolf hat, but I save that for Halloween. But no, we'll just maybe I'll wear my black hat to make myself look a bit more of a villain. I'll probably do it that way.
Okay, so villains next week, Sunday on Club Carnivore, and we'll see you around the playground. Remember to be naughty.
Thanks, Diana.
Remember to be naughty.
Yeah.
Always
Carnivore is fun. Remember that.
Okay, bye.